watching DD India and I'm Preeti presenting this edition of In Focus this afternoon, a show which we get for you to analyze and to introspect upon different sectors, different areas in the economy which will help in gaining self-reliance and Atmanirbharta for the country. And in the midst of climate change challenges, a lot of emphasis is being given these days on clean energy, clean fuel, green mobility as well. The market for electric vehicles has certainly faced significant growth over the years. Demand, sales and manufacturing have all been increasing. New brands, new models, new solutions. The electric vehicles market, in fact, is indeed buzzing. The union budget also for this year, 2022-23, has reiterated on promoting electric vehicles as a means of transportation in the country. In addition to the existing financial incentives under FAME 2 scheme to boost demand and the PLI schemes and auto segment focused on electric vehicles and other alternative energy technologies, the Finance Minister in the budget announced plans to implement a battery swapping policy and also formalizing interoperability standards. Where is the sector standing today, and what is the future when we talk of electric vehicles and green mobility in the country? To talk about it, we are joined in by guests, and we will be having detailed discussion on this. We are joined in by Mr. Sudhendu Jyoti Sinha. He's advisor Niti Aayog. He's present with us in the studio. Welcome, sir. We are also joined in by Mr. Vinkesh Gulati. He's president FADA, and Mr. Shubhamoy Bhattacharjee, senior economist, journalist. We welcome all of you this afternoon on DD India to talk more about the sector. To begin with, Mr. Sinha, I would want you to elaborate. When we talk of electric vehicles, when we're talking of green mobility, where are we standing as a country? Because a lot of expectations were there from the budget, and the budget did address some aspects of these expectations. I would want you to start the discussion, give tone to the program ahead. Where are we standing right now when we talk of green mobility in the country?
Now, Preeti, electric mobility is one of the most, globally it is one of the most significant disruption of the age. So, and India is adopting it like any other country. So if you see the other geographies, for example, Europe, the Denmark, Norway, Finland, Sweden, countries like that, Germany, UK, for example, they are adopting green mobility. They are adopting electric mobility. Same is the case with India. Now, the FAME 2 scheme that you mentioned, it is a flagship scheme of Government of India to incentivize people to adopt to green mobility. Yes. That is one the scheme. Now, under this scheme, 10,000 crore rupees has been allocated to support different segments. Of course, criteria is different. It is in a way to kind of help people migrate from the conventional fossil fuel based, internal combustion engine based mobility to that of the green and the clean and the connected kind of mobility, which is the electric vehicle. That is why it is the scheme. And as we saw, that currently the traction is tremendous, the way it is taking forward. So maybe a couple of years or 3 years ago, the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, they were always in a doubt whether they should go for manufacturing in a big way or not, because they were not sure of the demand. Today the situation is that in most of the vehicle segments, there is a waiting period. And all these OEMs, they are ramping up their capacity in a big way, so that they are able to meet the demands, the ever-growing demands of the people. And government is just standing by the side so that the complete ecosystem of electric mobility is supported. So whether it is manufacturing, whether it is demand creation, you mentioned about the PLI schemes. Yes, PLI schemes are again there. And then whether it is research and development, whether it is circular economy, whether it is coming out with the proper standards and specifications, and the complete regulatory framework, increasing awareness in all the elements of ecosystem, support is being given so that the entire country takes to this global disruption of electric mobility.
All right, I'll take that forward to Mr. Gulati. Mr. Gulati, how would you take this forward, the efforts which have been put in by the government as put forth by Mr. Sinha? A number of measures have been introduced to encourage green mobility, electric mobility in the country. As the President of Federation of Automobile Dealers Association of India, what is your take on that? How far has that bore fruit for the economy?
So thanks for having me on this show. And practically, this is the in thing what is being discussed in the auto retail fraternity.
Yes.
And like Sir said, there's a lot of change for the past 2-3 years since government has started focusing on electric vehicle. I remember FAME 2 came in some April 19, when we were all thinking, will India adapt to the electric vehicle? Whereas as of today, we are more bothered about production than the demand or the customer's acceptability. Because overall, all the customers want to go and buy an EV. But because of the other reasons, like you are aware, the production issues are there. And the kind of support the government is giving with our PM, Mr. Modi, clearly working, talking on clean energy, clean vehicles. The things are very positive on the ground. And practically, if I talk of numbers, we have doubled the electric vehicle sale as compared to, I can say not double, but tripled the electric vehicle sale as compared to last year, calendar year 2020 to calendar year 2021. And if this semiconductor issues and the overall shortages of battery cells is behind us, I feel this can be a big number overall. So if I talk about electric vehicle, the acceptability is good. There are a lot of good manufacturers who have ventured into it, and thanks to the PLI scheme, I am looking forward that another 2-3 years later we'll have more major players really pushing this game up, and customers' acceptability is at the best. So all things are in positive. We are just looking forward to a production, a supply chain easing off, and then actually riding on the bandwagon of electric vehicle in auto retail.
All right, Mr. Bhattacharjee, your evaluation of the sector, there were expectations that the PLI scheme could further be, extended, which in fact did not materialize due to, some factors. But at the same time, the government has also initiated other, aspects, other measures that would give more teeth to the industry. On the global page, when we talk of, the popularity of electric vehicles in other countries, would you say that in India, this industry or this transition from the conventional mode of transport to green mobility, are we still in the nascent stage?
That's a good question to ask. And the reason why I'm saying it is that AIM and PLI, all of these, as you were just discussing right now, all of these are schemes which will be, are the basic building blocks, which means that they are the first in the line. But I don't think that that is the only one that will be happening. As you rightly pointed out, this budget has, for instance, talked about battery swapping. Now, there will be subsequent other announcements. Why is that necessary? Because as the technology matures, new opportunities will come in. That's one thing. The other thing that will happen is that people and the companies especially will also be getting an understanding of how they work their financials and the technology together to be able to take maximum advantage. So, for instance, in the FAME 2 scheme, the government has given out tenders for,
Yes.
for buses, about 5,500 buses. So that's a very good first step. But say that is where it will stop? No, it won't. Because given the demand that is going to happen, these would obviously rise. The first movers will be creating the opportunities. And obviously there are shortages. One of the big things is obviously the issue about supply side incentive, which we can talk about later in the program. That whether the emphasis on localization is
Yes.
in manufacturing, whether that are we in a position to actually push for localization in battery manufacturing? So there are those issues that we need to really talk about. But the point is that I look at these programs coming together now, as both Mr. Sinha and we both talked about, that earlier on there wasn't a traction because the market wasn't clear. The EV ecosystem was also developing across the world, and now it is coming into place. So I expect further tweaks as we go along. So that's my first take. Yeah.
A task well begun is half done, is what is said. So more power to this sector in the days ahead. We'll continue this discussion, but at present we are heading for a short break. You're watching In Focus this afternoon, and here we are discussing the efforts which have been made to further give more strength to electric vehicles, to electric mobility in the country. Stay with us. We'll be back in a short while.
As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching In Focus this afternoon, and we're joined in by guests. We're talking about electric mobility in the country, and we're joined in by three guests. In the studio, we're joined in by Mr. Sudhendu Jyoti Sinha. He is advisor Niti Aayog, and also Mr. Vinkesh Gulati, President FADA, and Mr. Shubhamoy Bhattacharjee. He is a senior economic journalist. Sir, Mr. Sinha, when we were talking of the scope of this sector in the country. Now, when we talk of the sector in the other countries, now there is this global outlook report for 2021 by IEA, and it has said that there are over 10 million electric cars on the road worldwide in 2020, which means a close to 43% increase. Now, different countries have put forth different measures to encourage people to use electric mobility, and the US, for example, it is one of the biggest markets, and it has been using tax exemptions, tax credits and rebates to help people adopt green mobility. And countries like China, they also have been exempting these vehicles from tax, purchase taxes. This indeed would somewhere instill more buying power to the consumers, which would give more strength to the sector. For the benefit of our viewers, I would want you to spell out more since the beginning what all measures have been put in place by the government, because time and again we've seen the Prime Minister elaborate on how to what extent the crisis is when we talk of climate change that is being faced by the world, and time and again he has laid emphasis on clean energy, clean fuel. That has translated on the global page also with the establishment of ISA. So put all this together, what measures have been made by the government till now to encourage green mobility in the country, specific measures that have been put in place by the government?
So, if I might say that India's EV story is absolutely interesting, it's absolutely exciting, if I might say. So, if I can identify 4 or 5 major interventions, if I might say, the first one would be that in 2018, in the MOVE Summit that was held in September 2018, and then Prime Minister himself kind of laid down the contours of mobility. So he identified 7 C's. It has to be clean, it has to be connected, it has to be charged. So 7 C's he laid down and said that this should be the mobility paradigm. And of course, electric mobility was one that was fitting in the entire it was connecting to all the 7 C's. That was one area. As a follow-up to it, that on say on 7th of March, the National Mission on Transformative Mobility and Battery Storage was set up at Niti Aayog. So it was given the mandate to drive it forward. Subsequently, just from 1st of April 2019, FAME 2, which was a modified version of FAME 1, that was launched. And it was not just we stopped there. The same FAME 2 was re-strategized last year in 2021 in the month of June. And that is the time when we came out with the re-strategized version of FAME 2. So what the thinking through was that one strategy, a single method of approach could not be applicable to all the vehicle segments. So 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, cars, all our buses, they require different kind of models, different kind of approach. For the 2-wheelers, the approach was that we raise the incentives so that they become more and more affordable to the middle and the lower segment of the society. That was for the 2-wheelers. For the 3-wheelers, precisely what we did was, we said that we should have an aggregated demand all over the country. So aggregation was the strategy, that was the principle which we adopted for the 3-wheelers. So we said that let's go and support in one go 3 lakh vehicles. Now we roped in EESL, which is one of the subsidiaries of Ministry of Power, and this is CESL. So what they did was that they have aggregated the demand, and now they found out the price discovery. They went in for a price discovery. As a result, 20% price, upfront price of the sticker price, that crashed down. So the vehicles, 3-wheelers, became all the more affordable. For the buses, the model that we adopted was little different. We said that instead of thin spread of resources all over the country, we should identify specific number of cities in which the intervention should be there. So we identified 9 cities having a population of 4 million plus. These 9 cities, we said that in these 9 cities, there should be complete saturation of buses based on electric energy. So these 9 cities were there. So that was another method that we adopted. Now this was the re-strategized FAME. That was the second intervention, major intervention by the government. The third one was the PLI scheme. The PLI scheme in 2 areas. One was advanced chemistry cell, because it is the battery which is the soul, which is the most important, most cardinal of a vehicle. So for instance, just to give you an example, in a car, if the cost is say 100 rupees, then 40% cost is only the vehicle.
Yes.
40% is the cost of battery. So battery ought to be manufactured in India. It has to be globally the best. It has to be the best in quality. So that was the approach, and PLI scheme for advanced chemistry cell has been floated, which is now in fact we are going to wrapping it up. That is, we are at that stage, and maybe India would see for the first time in 2024-25, in that year we will be witnessing India's first Make in India advanced chemistry cell, which will be one of the best in the global standards. And finally, it was for the automobile components, the most advanced components. So what you see is that the basic approach has been taken care of, the demand has been taken care of through the FAME, the manufacturing support has been given through the PLI, both for the batteries as well as for the components. And today, it is always a great satisfaction to hear from the industry once they say that whatever government should have done, they have already done.
Right.
Now it is the time for the industry to rise to the occasion and start delivering in a big way, so that we are able to adopt electric mobility to the level that we want to aspire for.
Okay, I'll take that forward to Mr. Gulati. Mr. Gulati, does that also find a resonance with you? Because Mr. Sinha says that everything that the government could put in place has already been done. Now it is time for the industry to rise. On your part, what is it that the industry is facing at present? Because, you know, transportation, commuting is something which is very basic for not only just an economy, for an individual as well. What does it take for a common person like you or me to, you know, make a complete shift to green mobility, to electric mobility, and, you know, translating that on ground? Because taking forward the vision of the government on ground would mean, you know, the people, the countrymen taking that forward. So you representing the industry, what does it take, you know, for materializing of this plan, of this vision to the ground?
So I'll cut this question into two, one from the industry side and one from yours and my side as an Aam Aadmi. So from the industry side, I feel government has done a lot. They have really put in a lot of support systems, a lot of motivation systems. Any disruption which happens in such an old industry, an established industry, it takes time in normal people adoption. So as of today, overall the industry is geared towards achieving what government wants us to do, and has given us the things to catalyst it and agreed on that. And on the other hand, if I talk about the customers or Aam Aadmi, there are still some resistance in their mind with the range anxiety, the shift from normal ICE engines to electric vehicle, which slowly and steadily are being addressed by the industry, by the government, and by the dealers all put together. The availability is one big issue as of today, because if I talk about ICE two-wheeler or an ICE three-wheeler, you can get it all across any district in India. But if I talk of similar, that if I want to buy an electric vehicle two-wheelers, there would be some 40 or 50 odd cities in India which will be where a customer can go and buy it. So these kinds of resistance is there. No doubt the issue is the production side or from the manufacturing side, which is now going gung-ho, and I'm expecting that we'll at least have 3-4 manufacturers which will be making some 5 lakh vehicle per year for this calendar year. So once everybody is there in two-wheeler making 5 lakh, at least 4, we are talking of big numbers in that category. One thing you should consider that already the electric vehicle three-wheeler segment, which is the passenger vehicle segment, is already shifted 50% towards electric vehicle. So now a diesel or a CNG vehicle sells less than an electric vehicle three-wheeler. So that's the inception point for one category of automobile. The second inception point is the two-wheeler, which I am feeling if we talk about electric vehicle two-wheeler in another 5 or 6 months, you will find the adoption has increased like manifold. So overall, whatever government has provided and supported to make this industry run is there. There are some issues, like I said, range anxiety and all. That is also being addressed by Indian Oil coming up, and there are a lot of startups coming up, putting in charging station at a lot of places. Yes. So once those are there, a normal customer won't want to, or I can say won't hesitate in buying an electric vehicle, because as of today he knows if I move somewhere I can even have 100 rupees petrol and put it. But for electric vehicle, he'll have to give some time, which is huge. So once these startups come up with a fast charging, charging at least every 1 kilometer they have a station, I feel these things will be adapted fast, and we'll reach the phase what government wants to.
All right, Mr. Bhattacharjee, the automobile sector, we're talking of adding another aspect, another, when you're talking of widening this automobile sector, to what extent the ancillary sectors also would, the contribution of these sectors would also be very important, which means that the government's idea of Make in India, the government's idea of, having a strong foothold in the global manufacturing market when we talk of these batteries, which are important part of the automobile, as put forth by our guest in the studio as well. So to what extent will it give more teeth to the idea of government, Make in India, and at the same time make for the world as well? Sir, I would request you to unmute your device, please.
Sorry, I said I was listening to Mr. Gulati and Mr. Sinha very carefully, and they made some very valuable points, which I was checking out. I was reminded also in that context, I was listening to them about what happened when we shifted to CNG. What you noticed is that in 2001 when from then when the CNG revolution started happening on the three-wheeler segment in India, the demand outstripped supply. Why did it happen? Because the people who were buying the vehicles or shifting to the new way fuel, they found it value for money. Now that is where the sweet spot for any shift of this scale. So when we are shifting from petrol diesel for two-wheelers to electric, that sweet spot is what the customer looks at. The customer doesn't particularly get concerned about what is this level of subsidy, what the government is doing.
Yes.
What she calculates is that what is it in it for me? Now, what we can see from what Mr. Sinha is saying and what Mr. Gulati is saying is basically that the government and the industry are coming together to create the sweet spot. What does it mean for the customer would be that whether the benefits that are coming from the government comes down to something which makes her purchase decision attractive. That is something which will be very important in terms of the pricing that the companies will have to be setting for their vehicles. It will be for two-wheelers. I'm very impressed to see that the three-wheelers, the shift over has been very strong, and one of the major reasons is that the pricing of the vehicle. So overall, the cost of it, that the companies now need to work out very carefully that how much do they leave on the table for the customers to be able to pick up the pick up these vehicles.
Yes.
You can create all sorts of incentives, and the government can only go till that far. But once the government has done its part, then the industry has to decide, and that is where I suppose a long-range understanding of that developing the market will be an important consideration for companies. So of what they can do. Like yesterday, for instance, or rather this week, the government has, under the Champion OEM scheme, received and approved applications from major four-wheelers who are also going to make the shift. But there also, the question would be, what is it that they make it in terms of making it attractive for the buyer to buy? Because unless that question is consistently solved, what we are saying, talking about the charging stations, range anxiety, and all those things, it all boils down to the fact that what does the customer see it as valuable for herself. The big advantages in the Indian automobile industry has actually delivered value for money over decades. And customers there's a huge range, there's a lot of category of models available, so it's been a very big success story. That success story has to now fulfill probably its biggest challenge, shifting to an entirely new fuel, an entirely new ecosystem. They would therefore be very so the customers would basically be asking these questions, and that is when you would find the dealerships expanding beyond the cities. As Mr. Gulati is pointing out, there will be demand coming for dealerships to expand beyond the cities to smaller towns. People rushing in to exchange their older vehicles for the electric vehicles. So I suppose that is where it will be necessary that pricing decision will be very critical, and for that means the companies have to relook at their profits and their costs and make a long-term decision. So I would say that inflection point has come, because if it doesn't, then what happens is then Mr. Sinha and his tribe will have to go back to the drawing board, and will have to start reworking the subsidy regime again to see how to make the customer buy the EV. You know it's necessary, but you can't force the customer. So essentially now, therefore, a very interesting mix of, I expect to see over the next few months, the pricing decisions and others being made, which will actually be the trigger for people to make the switch over. Yeah.
All right, a very important point put forth, developing the market. How big is this task? How big is this challenge? We'll talk more about it, but at present, let's head for a short break. You're watching In Focus this afternoon, and we are discussing electric mobility in the country. Stay with us.
India.
Namaste land.
مرحبا إلى الهند.
Zari India.
Intu ni hao.
Salam India. Namaste India.
नमस्कार भारत.
Nous sommes l'Inde.
نحن هنود.
India.
ما هندي هستي.
Mung Hindian.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
Your window to rising India. India's voice on global platforms. Latest news from India and around the world. In-depth analysis of global headlines. Watch DD India in your country. Available for downlink in all Southeast Asian countries. STTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 17 at 93.5 degrees east. HDTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 10 at 83 degrees east. For technical details, scan here. Switch to DD India now.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching In Focus this afternoon and we're discussing green mobility in the country. Mr. Sinha, before heading for the break, we were a very important point was put in by Mr. Bhattacharjee when he talked of developing the market and, inspiring, in fact, encouraging the customer to, buy the electric vehicle. Now, when we talk of the measures which have been put forth by the government, then battery swapping, charging the battery and making sure that the vehicle runs smoothly on road. This is a very important concern of the person who heads out to buy an electric vehicle. What is battery swapping? I would want you to explain to our viewers. And the minister, in fact, in a budget speech has said that a battery swapping policy will be developed, and that will also encourage special mobility zones for the electric vehicles in the country.
Yes. So battery swapping, if I could draw an analogy for the understanding of the viewers. So just try to think it as a gas cylinders that we used to have. So you own the oven, you do not own the cylinder.
Yes.
Of course, maybe in the beginning you give some caution money for that, but you are not much bothered about whether that particular cylinder is coming back to you or not. Your concern is whether it is filled with the gas that is able to keep the earth burning. That is what your concern is. Precisely, it is the same thing here. So you own the vehicle, the battery you can, may not. That choice is, that is an optional. Now, once you have got the battery, you can go over to a charging station. You don't have to be waiting for getting it charged there.
Right.
It will easily be replaced. So naturally, for the two-wheelers, for three-wheelers, maybe also for the cars, where the weight is relatively less, could be say 30 kilograms, 40 kilograms, it is easily one could just take it out and then another one could be placed into it. So that charge anxiety is taken care of. You don't have to much bother about that, whether in a particular charge how far you will be going. The only thing that you should be knowing is that where exactly is the swapping station, so that you could go there and get the battery swapped. So that is what a major decision that government has taken, and that has been brought into this year's budget. In addition to that, in addition to the battery swapping, the charging infrastructure as such, the dense chargers, they have been brought into the list of infrastructure, list of harmonized infrastructure. By that, what is meant is, for them now there will be a kind of dedicated fund for taking it forward. Banks will be more comfortable in giving loans to those who are in the manufacturing stream, or maybe for the charge point operators, for those who are into the stream of dense chargers. Therefore, it would be easy for them to go into the stream of charging. You see, what a wonderful journey it has been. Initially, you wanted people to be aware that it is better than the conventional fuel. Once that is overcome, that is brought, that was riveted into the minds of people, then we said that okay, we will incentivize you. Post incentivization, we said that okay, we will manufacture good vehicles. Now we say that okay, the most critical component battery, that will also be made in India.
Yes.
Now we say we will give you the best of the global standards, the best of the specifications will be there. And now the last element, which is the charging infrastructure, we are saying we will take care of the chargers. So the entire, you see, that is how the entire, from end to end,
yes,
the support has been extended by the government. And I should not be laying credit only for the government. In addition to the government, all the stakeholders, the industry people, because they are the ones who are at the center of the field. So naturally, we are providing them the regulatory framework, and that too is based on the kind of understanding that we get from them after talking to them. So the government has engaged into a very, very intense kind of deliberations with all the stakeholders over a period of time, thought that what exactly understanding does it bring them to, stitched them, recalibrated the policies so that it is able to provide that end-to-end support. And that is why you see that in this particular budget, there are 3-4 areas. First is in the priority area only, they have talked of positive contributions to the climate change. Then they have talked of charging infrastructure, dense charging infrastructure in the list of harmonized infrastructure. They have talked of battery swapping, and there also they have mentioned that there should be innovative financial solutions to it. Battery should be as a service. This should be taken as a service where the ownership does not matter. Service of battery does. And finally, in the public transportation, as you mentioned, you showed it in the beginning, that in the public transportation, the thrust should be on the green mobility, green choice.
Right.
So this is how we have taken steps one after another, and that is how we have been able to pull off this awesome achievement.
All right, Mr. Gulati, what is the what is the caliber, or where do electric cycles in the country stand? Because when we talk of the budget, this year's budget, then not much emphasis has been, or in fact, if I would put it in another way, then the electric cycles are not under the mandate of the PLI scheme. So would that somewhere be a hindrance towards people getting more bent towards electric cycles? Because in other foreign countries, a lot of mobility happens through cycles, through electric cycles as well. But India, isn't it, it's not popular to that extent. What would it take to further encourage electric cycles in the country?
So thanks for the question. See, practically, if we talk, there are the volume is huge. All put together, the auto industry, it's above that. So, but there are a lot of more innovative companies which are working. We just saw, I just saw a video for 5 days back where a normal cycle can be converted into an electric cycle with a device, and that's fireproof and waterproof also. So there are disruptions happening in that cycle also. The PLI no doubt missed that, but I feel the way electrification is happening in the auto industry in India and the way the government is promoting green energy, that will also come up on its own. No doubt if there would have been any support in PLI, it would have come faster. But overall, I feel it will come on its own. And frankly, I'll on the point on battery swapping, we as an industry are really happy that government has come up with this. No doubt there are some countries where it has not been successful, but in India this will really help us, because as of today around 50% cost is of battery, and if I have to buy a two-wheeler worth a lakh and I get it at 55,000, it's easier conversion from an ICE engine to an electric vehicle. And the example what Mr. Sinha gave regarding the gas cylinder and all, that's the way forward going ahead. A customer has not to shell out more money, gets the money, gets a vehicle at half the price and is able to drive how much he wants with the battery. And obviously, if this support comes up, and along with the charging stations, even the battery swapping stations increase, we will surely get to electrification faster. One more input from my side is I feel the government and the Niti Aayog step by step has put us on the track now. Maybe another 2 years down the line, we will not be talking about FAME scheme, because we'll be in that process where we'll not need any support to shift to electrification. The customers will on its own want to buy. So I'm not saying the ICE engines will be off, or CNG will not be there, or LPG won't be there. So I feel like we said today, you want to buy a vehicle, you ask about a petrol hai, diesel hai, CNG hai, or what options are there. We'll be talking of electric, and slowly and steadily electric will become the major source of energy or fuel for a vehicle, which in 2-3 years time will sustain on its own without any support or any clutches, I feel.
Okay, Mr. Bhattacharjee, you were talking of developing the market, and also in detail we've talked about the measures which have been put in by the government. Now, also let's talk of, as Sir had put, the PLI scheme, encourages production, but at the same time, what more is to be done to encourage localization? I was talking of ancillary sectors associated with this, and also there is a proposal to reduce customs duty for nickel ore and concentrates, and also, other aspects which are required for the manufacture of lithium-ion batteries, which would in fact bring down the cost, and it will make all the vehicles, the EVs, more affordable. That would, endorse the idea of green mobility in the country. So what is your take on, this giving more opportunity to start up India, this giving more opportunity to make in India, and how far can, these be taken together for the betterment of the sector? So again, I would request you to, yes.
What happened is I was basically ensuring that there's no ambient noise, so that I think it gets along. Yeah, but true enough. I mean, the Indian automotive sector is about $100 billion industry, and it is therefore something. What happens to this sector is very significant in terms of its linkage with the rest of the economy. That's massive. It's also one of the largest exporter. And in fact, I'm very optimistic that the pace of two-wheeler adoption, especially, will be probably much faster than even what the Niti Aayog is talking about. Niti Aayog expects that by 2030, 80% of the two-wheelers and three-wheelers will be electric. India, is a young country where people are willing to change to the new habits very fast. So I am actually optimistic that very soon companies will be seeing constraints in terms of their ability to supply rather than demand not coming up. So I expect the demand would be ramping up very fast, and probably we'll be achieving many of these targets far earlier than the 2030 deadline. Like even for cars, it should be, the scale should be ramping up very soon. So but having said that, a very major issue which you talked about, the localization and the ancillary industry, is the concern that it also employs about close to, or rather it's at about 19 million people. The data of the Department of Heavy Industries. Now, if you look at the data, you also realize that this is, inclusive of both direct as well as indirect employment. You go across cities in India that the ancillary industry, the repair of the vehicles, right from the electric cycles right up to the cars, even trucks and buses. There are these workshops of different qualities, different types, which employ so many people. One of the major things that we'll need to guide, and that is something that I'll ask Niti Aayog to particularly keep on looking at, is how does the transition in employment happen? It will be difficult, I understand, because it's a new technology coming in. Also, there are not that many moving parts in a vehicle, and in an electric vehicle compared to an internal combustion engine. So, therefore, the wear and tear, happily for owners, will be less for those vehicles. But but all of these has consequent impact on employment issues. Now, obviously, the industry can't be subsidizing employment. No one is definitely asking about that. But it is something that will be a big challenge. A lot of India's in the middle cities, in the smaller cities, the automobile sector provides a huge employment, and that issue we talked about people getting into the ancillary industry. Overall, that ecosystem provides a very major support structure for our industrial sector. So it is something that we'll have to, obviously there are no easy answers here. People will have to be trained, and how much of that training will be the government's responsibility, how much is the industry's responsibility, all of these will be there, but there definitely will be, as the demand for internal combustion engine goes down, the demand for their services will come down. But simultaneously ramping up the demand for the new technology and to what extent that sort of demand can be fulfilled. These are interesting questions, and I think now, having achieved the success that the government is already showing in terms of PLI scheme, the FAME schemes and others, probably a bit more detailed work on what sort of employment structure can be looked at and what are the avenues, what are the possibilities may be necessary at this stage to start working on. Remember, the schemes also took years to mature. So I suppose it's a good time now to start looking at these things a bit more closely and to see how the employment issues can mature over the years, so that we get some very positive results rather than achieving, coming there suddenly and finding there's a crisis on our hand.
Yes.
So that's very, 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 very linked, and this doesn't take away from the massive success that we all expect the EV industry to be for us. But these are the issues that needs to be looked at.
Yes. All right. So our guest there pointing out to the issues that would also be inherent when we talk of the EV sector flourishing in the country. We'll talk more about that, but at present we're heading for a short break. You're watching In Focus, and till now we have talked of the sector, the prospects. What is the road ahead? In the next part, we'll delve upon that. Stay with us.
With the world's largest COVID vaccination drive, India is leading the way. As the vaccine reaches every corner of the nation, do not forget the mantra, Dawai bhi, Kadai bhi. Let's continue our fight against COVID-19. Vaccination along with social distancing, sanitization and masks.
Mask up, India!
Put your mask on and cover your nose and be safe.
Mask up, India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching In Focus, and we have reached the fag end of the program. We will bring in closing comments from all our guests. To begin with, Mr. Sinha, India on the global EV page, and also the sector, the future of the sector from here on, apart from having put in all the measures, and also we've heard about the challenges, but the expectations from the industry. How do you foresee the sector from here on?
No, there will be very, very positive development. We will be completely adopting this particular disruption in years to come. And as I see the way forward, it was mentioned. So the first thing is a lot of awareness still is to be, that is to be developed.
Awareness, yes.
So when channels like yours, say Doordarshan, other channels also, when they start propagating this concept, that they're showing the advantages of electric mobility, that cuts a lot of the positivity into the society. So a lot of awareness, because I still remember my own understanding from Glasgow COP26, where they said that the difference between that conventional fossil fuel and the modern electric mobility is only education.
Yes.
So they simply said, by that of course they meant awareness. So a lot of awareness initiative, if I might say. The second one is of course R&D. We have been able to nudge as many as 9 IITs to get into this field directly. And if I might inform you, last year for the first time IIT Delhi had a completely dedicated program for on electric mobility, and they had the first BTech batch of 30 students into that, IIT Delhi. That was R&D. Third, if I might say that in addition to R&D, a lot of upskilling, reskilling, that is also required. And finally, you know, states have a very big role to play.
Yes.
So as of now, some 25 states have either their own EV policies. We are always into it. Niti Aayog is always playing a key role. What I would say that all the states and union territories, they must have very, very aspirational EV policy, so that the investors, the manufacturers, they are clear, and then their EV policy should be able to attract investment, bring about new opportunities for employment, and also bring prosperity to the state. So these are the new things that we should be doing.
All right, so these were the points put forth by Mr. Sinha. Mr. Gulati, would you also endorse that when we talk of implementation, we talk of, you know, the framework has been, you know, decided on, the framework has been built up, but translating that on ground, that would mean ushering in prosperity. At the same time, you know, awareness and education would play a very important role.
I strongly agree to that point, and frankly, these awareness tactics, what we have seen for the past 2 years, has got up today where the customer normally is open to accepting buying a vehicle. Our industry is overall geared up to come into this EV wagon. But one thing what Mr. Sinha said about these states, that's where we lose a bit, because not all states today are EV friendly for the customer side. He mentioned on the investment side, but there's a lot of states who are still not supporting the EV adoption, because the benefit what if you buy a vehicle in Delhi or Maharashtra, it won't be in UP or some other state. That's where the manufacturers face problem to handle the customers, and even customers face problem because they know that a price of a vehicle may be X, but if I buy in Delhi it is X, but if I buy in X place it's not that. So that is where a lot of issues are. And coming back to the co-panelist on the skilling and upskilling, obviously the Automotive Skill Development Council is already working on that. I am involved in that. So we have an electric vehicle training courses for the technicians. We've already done some 1,000 numbers, and there are other in place. I agree the numbers required for a normal ICE vehicle technicians will be, and for electric vehicle will be a huge difference. So we'll have to see how to employ those people who move out of that system from dealership or from roadside garages. So that's a big concern going further. But I feel there'll be still 2-3 years time when we actually see that happening. So we have a 3 years leadway to work on that. Maybe upskill all of them towards electric vehicle, or upskill to some other skilling way also to help them. But overall, we are confident that electric vehicle is in India. Customers are happy buying it, provided they're resistant, they're thinking on range anxiety and all things are. And overall, we are on the right track to adapt the EV in a faster way.
All right, right track on the, you know, we are on the right track to adopt EVs in a faster way. Mr. Bhattacharjee, would you also endorse that and take that forward for us? So please unmute your device.
There were 115 companies that filed application under the PLI scheme and that is a remarkable number of companies, which shows that obviously there is a lot of what I would call the strength in the scheme to encourage companies to try to participate. That shows that this is a policy on the right track. We often have policies which are about subsidizing things which don't really make much of a sense. This is a scheme which actually hits the sweet spot in terms of being able to encourage companies, encourage productivity, and is just right for the economy.
All right, thank you all of you for joining us this afternoon on DD India and sharing in your insights. So that was today's edition of In Focus. wherein we talked of the scope of electric and green mobility in the country, what all has been put in place by the government, and what would it take for the sector to further take that forward and bring in more and usher in fact, more prosperity and self-reliance, not only for the sector but for the country as a whole. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.